The League is greatly affected by being a completely fictional construct. From its earliest days in the Victorian period, we had a relatively easy go of it, stripping in newspapers and other characters into the background. But as we progress through the decades, it's become more complex because there's so much more we can use. There's masses of billboards, there's television, there's motion pictures, there's far more media, and we acknowledge that and represent it. But we are aware that following the fictional narrative from even way before the original Victorian group, that the world would be quite altered by the presence of characters like the Invisible Man or the Nautilus and the kind of technology that grew up around them and was perhaps even influenced by them. So it's made it very rich, but as we get nearer and nearer to the present day, we have to tread more and more carefully, because there's more material that falls into areas that are not public domain. So we have to be very, very clever. The final book is a present day, and I was talking to Alan about it. I said, "Well, you know, present day is there's just something about it. It doesn't quite have that kind of glamour that you want." But I got into it and found I was completely fascinated, because it isn't really the present day. It's our present day in a fictional sense. So it's got all this other stuff that's accumulated around it, and we've got a really, really big ending, but set in South London, where I grew up. And suddenly I was looking at South London in a different way, from the perspective of what if the Antichrist appeared here, and it becomes altogether a little bit more disturbing. So it went from the one that was going to have the most problem drawing to one I had the most fun drawing, and I think it is the most spectacular, and it caps the story very, very nicely, and it's taken the Mina and Quatermain relationship right to where it should be. And you know, Mina's always been the heart of the book. She's always been the centre of the book, and the character I really like the most. And seeing her arc through this series has been kind of fascinating. And we pick her up in 2009 in very, very bad shape. But you know, it's been a delight, an absolute delight to draw, and draw the characters as well. Yeah, the shift in pop culture is something that we talk about a lot. Some of it, I mean, and this has a bearing actually on my feelings about the present day, because I mean, you do start to feel, you start to feel a bit like your dad's talking about things were better back then, which is always a bit disturbing. But we started the series in the Victorian period with these gigantic characters. They're absolutely gigantic characters, and incredibly influential on what characters have followed, the whole pulp, early American comics. But you also get an interesting graph line of descent of things becoming a little bit diminished, a little bit poorer than they were, and then of course you've got the cycle of things being kind of remade and remodelled and redressed, and that's kind of interesting, and it makes forming a League group, we start to think about it, and of course we've got the constraints of public domain as well, of who exactly do you use, who's out there. I mean, and if we could use anybody, how many really great fictional characters are out there. Oh, favourite moments? Well, all the Dockside stuff in 1910 I loved, because I just love that almost kind of Dickensian feel, again, to draw all those grotesque characters, and I grew up relatively close to Woolwich and Woolwich Docks and that area, and so I was kind of channeling memories of childhood memories, what that looked like. It was fairly sinister in my recollection. And in 1969 it was the the Hyde Park sequence, which was it was a lot of work, but it was a lot of fun to do, because it was kind of wild. I mean, it was completely bonkers. I enjoyed that. And the latest book, well, it's difficult to say before the book's come out, but there's the climax. I think is probably the best climax we've had in any of the books. It's, I think it is genuinely disturbing and striking, and it's frustrating really, because I won't describe particular scenes, but it does give away so much that it kind of upends the story for people. But suffice to say, I think we've delivered the kind of ending the series deserves, and set things up for where it will go in the future as well, which is the promise of a truly apocalyptic tale, but it's a big story. Well, when we finished Century, when we were approaching the conclusion of it, sort of late last year, Alan said to me, well, what do you feel like doing next? And I said, well, it'd be great to have because there's two next possible stories. One was set in the early 60s with Mina's supergroup, so it'd be a superhero book, which we're quite keen on. And the other one is a Blazing World story, which is huge. It's a huge story. But both, the Mina one needs some, we need to talk about it a lot more. And the Blazing World one was so gigantic, I just couldn't, I just saw myself approaching my sort of 70s before it's finished or something. But the thing that kept crossing my mind while doing Century was when we left 1910, we left it with a great scene where Ishmael and Broad Arrow Jack are talking about Jenny Nemo, about how dangerous she is, possibly more dangerous than her father. Oh wow, we really have to see her again. You know, it sounds really, really interesting. And we'd seen her as an older woman on the deck of a Nautilus in the 60s, but with all that stuff in between, there's nothing. So I said, Alan, what about a story about Jenny? He went, oh, okay. But I said, could we do a 48-page book? Because I used to do 48-page books quite a lot in the past, and I actually like the format, and it makes for a kind of nice album length. And so we talked about it a bit more, and I thought, yeah, we could do that, and start another strand, a spin-off from League, really, which is a kind of, I guess you'd call it a League of Extraordinary Gentlemen library, which doesn't necessarily feature the League characters. I mean, none of the League characters appear in Heart of Ice, but a lot of other fictional characters do, and of course it's got Jenny, who we've seen before, Ishmael and Broad Arrow Jack, who we've seen before, and the Nautilus, which would be, because we're set in 1925, so it's the beginnings of Art Deco. So we've got an Art Deco Nautilus, and we open in 1925 New York. So that's immediately different and great for us. And as we've progressed on it, Alan's finished writing it now, he really enjoyed the discipline of a 48-page story. It's a different pace, and it gallops. It really gallops along. I guess the bulk of the story takes place in Antarctica, which again is a complete shift. We're away from London. We're away from all the League kind of comfort zones in a way. But it's I've done about 5 pages of it now, and it's just different. It's different. The 1920s is a great period to be working in, and I love the feel of the kind of Art Deco world and the costumes and so on. And the story then, it becomes very dark, very dark as well. So anyone who's followed League will, I think they'll find it a kind of an effortless switch from following Mina. It was quite weird for me, because I've drawn Mina for so many years. I think apart from the beginnings of the Mars book, I've never not drawn Mina in any kind of League project. So, but Jenny, who's roughly 38 in the story. Oh no, 35, something like 35. She's a great character. She's really strong. So she becomes the Mina centre of this book. You know, another powerful female character, which is good, and a fairly strong female crew for the Nautilus on this particular period as well. So yeah, it was very, very exciting, and we set ourselves a deadline for it, and we want the book to come out, I guess, sort of later in the year, before Christmas, as soon as it's possible to do so. And I think there might be perhaps a couple more of these type of books which we can do with stories that we just don't have room to do in a regular League series, because they tend to be these gigantic stories that centre around Mina. But yeah, doing Jenny Nemo, and actually it's fun to be back on the deck of the Nautilus as well, you know, and a different Nautilus, no less dangerous.